In the meantime, the Lebashe Investment Group says it's pleased with the outcome of the Commission of Inquiry into the PIC. Warren Wheatley is the Chief Investment Officer, or rather Chief Executive Officer, and of course he joins us in the studio. Thank you very much for coming to our program.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks for having me.
All right, so you have actually been coming into our studios from time to time to refute the allegations concerning Lebashe. This time around, we feel vindicated.
We absolutely do. We found the report comprehensive, and it made no mention of any transgressions after a full investigation, so we feel absolutely vindicated.
When I was speaking to you last year, you said you had suffered reputational damage. Explain to us how that happened.
Well, South Africa is in a very strange environment. A lot of people believe that there are no consequences for corruption, and there seems to be a societal distress with a lack of progress. But there are consequences for people who are accused of corruption. For example, it strains relationships with your banks, it strains relationships with customers and clients, and it even strains your personal confidence and the way you approach business transactions. You're less confident, you're less able to express yourself with as much conviction as you otherwise would be. So there are clear and damning consequences for reckless defamation.
So how has Lebashe been affected in the process?
It was really tough at first. Number one, it meant early mornings. I had to be up at 4 a.m. to be at the SABC studios, lots of interviews, discussions with banks, customers, clients. But eventually, after we had, we decided on a strategy, and we decided we wouldn't ignore the defamation case. We wouldn't ignore the allegations. We would confront them head on, and we would conduct ourselves with transparency and open ourselves up to scrutiny by the media and the public. And the moment we did that, a veil was lifted, and we were able to then conduct business as we otherwise would.
So if you were conducting business in a legitimate way, at first your transactions were deemed questionable. Why do you think there were those suspicions?
Well, the reason those suspicions were there is clear. A politician needed a platform to make a noise, to make himself relevant for the elections that came up in that year. There was no other reason, no other rationale, but he needed a platform, and so chose what he thought would be an easy target. I think he would rethink that strategy if you gave him the opportunity today.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we spoke to General Bantu Holomisa last year about the allegations he made, and he stood by what he was saying. So now that the report has come out, what are you saying about it?
Well, we're continuing with our defamation claim. I wish Mr. Bantu Holomisa had this much conviction in court. He continues to avoid appearing in court with delays with all sorts of reasons. But we will get our day in court, and he will finally have to answer for these allegations.
Do you think that he intentionally wanted to damage your reputation when he was raising alarm about corruption at the PIC? Because if what he said was defamation against your company, but then subsequently the report actually brings out some elements of corruption generally, do you think that he could have actually reported on it generally instead of being specific and honing it only on Lebashe?
First of all, I don't think the reason the commission happened was as a consequence of Mr. Holomisa's allegations against us. They may have assisted in persuading the president to pursue that path, but I think it's disingenuous for him to take credit that the entire commission was as a result of his inquiries. So let's have that as a point of departure. Secondly, I'm not suggesting it was a personal vendetta or a personal agenda but we were a convenient whooping boy that he chose to use for his own agenda and for political enhancement of his own political campaign. I'm not suggesting he had anything personal against us or sought revenge or anything Machiavellian of that nature, but it was premeditated, it was with an agenda, a political agenda, and I would guess it had almost nothing to do with pursuing good corporate governance or any of the other virtues he claims to pursue.
But then General Bantu Holomisa was not screaming into the air. Rather, he was speaking to the president saying that he must investigate. And unfortunately, we tried contacting him throughout the day and we couldn't give him a right of reply so that he can tell us about what he says about the report that has just come out. But if you say there were political motives and he was just campaigning during the elections, but I mean, like, would you say that the president's office, whether it has responded or not, it would be one of the respondents in your defamation case?
If you have to consider a whistleblower and the methodology of whistleblowing, the methods he chose to expose us would have given any other criminal syndicate an opportunity to destroy or manipulate evidence. He chose to publicly broadcast it on social media, on his website, and he didn't do it in a way that would enhance the probabilities of conviction if we had been guilty of a claim. So from that perspective, if you are really intent on capturing criminals, you have to do it subtly, undercover, so that you can capture them in the act, as it were. The way he did it was purely to enhance his podium, enhance the audience he was talking to, and to score political points. He didn't even bother writing to us to get our view on any of the allegations, or we invited him to investigate our books and to attend our offices to satisfy himself that there was no problems. And he refused those invitations. I mean, if he had any real intention of uncovering the truth, he would have at least given us an opportunity to give our side of the story.
All right.
And the court agrees with me. And there's a number of reports from our proceedings thus far that vindicate us. This was just the final nail in his defamation coffin.
All right. No, thank you very much for making time to speak to us.
My pleasure.
All right, and just for the record, we did try to get in touch with General Bantu Holomisa, but to no avail. And of course, we're speaking here to Chief Investment Officer, or rather Chief Executive Officer of Lebashe Investments.